I've had job rejections for a long time. I started my career as soon as I finished my undergraduate in 2011, and these rejections have been things that have helped me look at my career in a different perspective. Hey, welcome here to a brand new episode. I'm your host, Dr. Faith Elizabeth Nanyonga. If you're listening in today, I'd like to take this minute to thank you for each and every time that you tune in to listen to me as I teach about career development and personal development. Your support is invaluable to me, and I don't take it for granted. If it's your first time here, welcome to the theframedsolutions podcast. And if you'd like to be a fan, there are 3 ways you can support this show and spread the love. Every single share, subscribe count matters, so do not think your efforts go unnoticed. The first way you could support this show is by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews not only make the world a better place for me as the podcast gets to many ears, but also rank our podcast higher in the podcast charts. You can subscribe to this podcast so that you do not miss out any episode as they are released. And also, you could choose to be a guest on the podcast by sending in an email. The email address is theframedsolutions@gmail.com. Thank you once again. So I recently conducted interviews for a virtual assistant and a videographer for my business. And these were informal interviews. In fact, I've done an episode about how to prepare for an informal interview, given that I was conducting informal interviews. I had a couple of people to interview for the interviews, and I zeroed down to my candidate. But the hardest thing I had to experience was to give the negative feedback or the regret or the rejection later, or telling someone who applied for the job that, sorry, I can't continue with you. Your application was unsuccessful, and I've decided to go with another applicant. I've been on both ends of the interview. I've been an interviewee, and also I've been an interviewer. I know getting a rejection later, be it an email or a phone call telling you are not successful for a job application or a scholarship application or a grants application, it's something that can make you deflated. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you my story when it comes to rejections and how I have come out on the other side after a rejection, especially a job or an opportunity or a scholarship that I really saw myself getting. Without further ado, let's get right into this episode. But if you haven't downloaded my blueprint to career clarity, a link is in the description of this episode. Please run, don't walk, and download the blueprint to career clarity. As 2023 comes to an end, this is the best time for you to start preparing yourself for the jobs that you want in 2024. And what better way to do that than getting my blueprint to career clarity? Clients who have used my blueprint to career clarity have reported back with good things. They've said it's helped them define a career plan for themselves. It's helped them project the next year of their career development, and also helped them gain the clarity they need to focus on what matters in their careers. So if this is you and you're looking for something to help you streamline your career to your goals, your ambition, and achieve the success that you want to achieve at the end of the day, the blueprint to career clarity is your thing. A link will be in the description. And after you've downloaded that blueprint, please take time to fill it in and get back to me. My email address is also in the description of this episode. Let me know how you found it and what aha moments you've had while you're completing the blueprint to career clarity. So, I've had job rejections for a long time. I started my career as soon as I finished my undergraduate in 2011. It's been over 12 years since I started my career. Yeah, I'm not so young. But in this period, I've had many rejections. And these rejections have been things that have helped me look at my career in a different perspective. In 2011, as I was finishing my undergraduate, I applied to work at the biggest institute in Uganda. It's called the Uganda Virus Research Institute. I wanted to do virology, which is the study of viruses, and I was so enthusiastic to get a placement at this place. I sent my first application. I never heard back from them. Second application, nothing. Third, fourth, fifth, and I think I'd gotten to 10 applications when I got my first regret. I remember taking a taxi back home and I was deflated. I felt I had not achieved anything because I'm done with school. I have good grades. When I apply for a job, I should be able to get it. But that was not the case. In fact, the regret came in an email telling me they received very many applications and mine appeared to be unsuccessful, so they would not continue with me on that post. The regrets kept coming because I kept applying for jobs. I was looking for where to start my career from. The mistake I was making is that I didn't get the feedback that I needed to make tweaks and changes to my job application. I still sent the same job application but changed application number, probably the title of what they're looking for, and change a few things in the body of the application and send it, expecting different results. But that was not the case. As you know, they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's what I was depicting. So in May 2011, I decided to change my approach. I got someone to help me, guide me in applying for the first job that I got. And also I'd gotten an internship that I was doing at that point. I was working at Moju. Moju is Makerere University, John Hopkins University Research Collaboration. I was doing an internship at Moju. And while I was there, of course, I'd talked to different people who had gotten jobs. Like I'd built my network. I was networking. I was telling people about the jobs that I needed. And a few people really helped me. Others would share with you the applications. Then you would look at the application and make tweaks to fit the jobs you're applying for. So when I got my first job, I'd nailed the application process. But one thing that those job rejections never did, they never told me how to tweak my applications to achieve the success that I needed to achieve at the end of the day. So in today's episode, I'm going to share with you some practical tips that you can take if you receive a reject for a job, for a grant, for scholarship, or any career opportunity that you're after. First thing, when you receive the rejection, ask the person providing you the rejection for any feedback they might be having. Fast forward to 2020, I'm looking for a postdoc because I finished a PhD. So I need to get a job because after a PhD, you're expected to have a job, and the expected route usually is a postdoc or anything that you decide to do. At first, I wanted to do a postdoc. So I looked for postdocs in all fields that would need my experience. That was the worst thing that I ever did for my career. So I applied to the University of Sydney. There was a job opening. I got it through the website portal of the university. I sent in my application. The recruiting doctor gets back to me. He asked me for more paperwork. He asked me for my qualifications. I send my qualifications. I tell him I'm done with the PhD. I sent him everything that they needed to have the job. I did the first interview. So there were subsequent interviews after the first, but I didn't get to hear back from him. So after the first interview, I was thinking, okay, they said they'll get back to the persons who would have gone to the next level in 2 to 3 weeks. 2 weeks came, crickets. Third week, crickets. So I decided to take matters in my hands. So I write to the doctor. I tell him, hey, I applied. Would you please provide me any update on my application? He didn't get back to me, which was really strange. So I decided to just quit and I looked for another job. Job number 2, I recall, I applied to Griffith University. It's based at the Gold Coast, Queensland. And I had everything the job needed. I had the qualifications, I had the experience, and I'd worked exactly with that class of viruses. I did the interview. They told me they would get back to me in 2 weeks. 2 weeks came, I got a regret telling me I was not successful. So I asked the person providing me the regret, could you please tell me something solid? Could you please tell me why my application was not successful? And this professor was brave enough to tell me there was someone else who they were trained for the job, so they were advertising for just advertising. I understood that. Number 3, rejection, was also another job I applied for. And in this job, they told me that my qualifications were more than what they needed for the job. So I'm sharing with you these experiences to tell you that if you get your rejection, the first thing you need to do is to ask for feedback. Do not accept any generic feedback of your application was not successful. Please consider applying for other jobs. Ask for direct feedback. Direct feedback could be, how can I improve in my coming applications? Could you please provide me constructive criticism about my application? What didn't I meet when I did the interview? That way, you know what to tweak when it comes to getting your next opportunity or even applying for your next opportunity. Number 2 is, do not take it personal. I know many of us want to get jobs. I've been at that state where I was looking for a job and I desperately needed to have a job to sustain my livelihood and also to work on things that I enjoy to do for my career so as to move my career ahead. But you have to understand that for every job that you apply for, at least 20 other people have applied for that job. So you're competing against 19 other people. So do not take it personal when you receive a negative feedback or a regret. What happens, sometimes you might find it's not about you, it's about them, the recruiters. Number 2, it might be, as I've shared, there was already someone they were preparing for that job. Probably there was already someone who was already in the system, but they had to advertise this job so that to increase the surface area of what they are interviewing. So do not take it personal when you get a regret. Number 3, after you've gotten the feedback, please put it into consideration. Like, I interviewed for a virtual assistant and a videographer to help me with my businesses. But there was one candidate who stood out of all the candidates I interviewed. I connected with this candidate on a deeper level because I was having an informal interview. That meant that I was going to select that candidate regardless of all other interviewees that I'd interviewed. So I say this to tell you that sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about the recruiter. So when you receive any feedback, please put it into consideration. Tweak your subsequent applications to depict the feedback that you've received. I've been on both ends of the interview. I have been on the recruiting side where I'm the one recruiting, as I've already explained, but I've also been an interviewee who has done interviews and I've had negative or regrets given to me. And some of those regrets actually came at a point of my life whereby I wasn't really sure of what I needed to do for my career. As I've told you, there was a point in my life where I was desperate. All I needed was to have a job. Because when you finish studying, most times you're scared. You might not get into the workforce if you don't take your first job. So I would look for jobs where they needed my skills, but sometimes I would downgrade my qualifications so that I can just get into the job market. In fact, all of those interviews I did not yield to any job offer. So I tell you this, that a regret sometimes might be a redirection. Implying, when you receive a regret, sit back and analyze the reasons as to why you're not selected for that job. Probably you didn't show the zeal that the employer needed. Probably your interviews were not well conducted, like you are not articulating the reasons as to why you wanted to work for that company other than any other company. Probably they already had someone else to do that job. Probably you're overly qualified for that position. Probably you still lack some skills when it comes to that job that you applied for. Or you didn't show any confidence that was needed in the job interview to make you be the best candidate for that position. All these are reasons as to why many times you might get a regret. So go out there and try to analyze your previous rejections. I know many of you have had rejections like I've done, and I've been very vulnerable to share with you those 3 major rejections I recall in my career and the tweaks I made to make sure that my career still went ahead, but in a direction that I felt was the direction I needed to take. If you've loved this episode, please consider subscribing to my podcast. I love recording these episodes because I really take time to just tell you stories about my career and also share with you the lessons that I've learned on my career journey, and also bring topics that I know are vital when it comes to your career development. Also, if you haven't known, I have started a YouTube channel. It will be up at the start of the new year, earliest January, and I would love it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. A link will be in the description of this episode. That YouTube channel will only be about career tips to get your career ahead and to help you achieve the career success that you want. I hope you've learned something from this episode. And if you have, please rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Subscribe to this podcast. Share it with your family, friends, and those that you think are interested in career development. Also, follow me on the socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. The username is theframedsolutions. I can't wait to speak to you in the next episode. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.